separate. There was a football coach, and there was a 14-year-old boy, and that coach said to that boy and to that team, "You're different from the rest of the boys in this school, the rest of the kids in this school, because you're on the football team." We all felt very special that day. He even went so far as to say, because we had gone through a lot of events to get ready for our first game, it's typically referred to as Hell Week. And so we felt ourselves very special and prepared. Now, I remember during one of these games, actually I remember during quite a few of these games, that I was sitting on the bench, not playing. So I didn't feel very separate. This "be ye separate and you are different" message that I had heard before was starting to wear off. And I was getting tired in the training and so forth and so on, and I was feeling more ordinary the more I sat on the bench. It's interesting that one of the things that makes Christianity so difficult and so difficult to understand is that it's not easy. And the iteration of Christianity, the true Christianity, we believe with our heart and soul, is here right now. And this particular form of Orthodox Christianity, ours, is actually very demanding. We're all standing for the most part. There's, of course, fasting. And then there are all the other moral and spiritual requirements that have come down to us from the ages. And let's be honest, they're difficult. For many people in our age, the idea of "be ye separate," that's a stumbling block. We spoke last week of the stumbling block that is the precious and life-creating cross. But there's another stumbling block that we're in the midst of, which is, and it's a false idea, you don't need to be separate. There is no separation. We're all just one. Everything is one. There's a shred of truth in this message. John 17, "Father, may they all be one." And that's on the last day. And we're in process towards that. But the idea that all Christianity, it's all the same, that's a false one. That's a false coming together, because the truth is, when you dig down and you look into it, they're not the same. The teachings are not the same. The expectations are not the same. And the things that we fear are, frankly, not the same. You heard the gospel this morning. Jesus Christ couldn't be more plain. "If you deny me before men, I will deny you before the Father. And if you affirm me before men and in this world, I will affirm you before the Father." That's an extremely demanding statement. Let's be honest about that. There's no getting around that. You can soften it. You can layer it with an idea, a strong idea of God's love, and theologians have done that. You can layer it with God's charity, divine charity, and theologians have done that. But some of our Christian friends, I say friends because I cannot say brethren, because there is a separation, would have us not to read that gospel. Some churches don't proclaim that gospel on Sunday. It is one that they have omitted purposefully. We're not doing that here. And I think this is one of the reasons, brothers and sisters, and our friends here who are watching, I think this is one of the reasons why Christianity is just doggone difficult. It's like that football team that I mentioned. Not all of my little 14-year-old mates finished the training that led to the first game. Some went home and didn't come back. Some turned in their helmet and their pads and their gear. They let it go. And then we spoke to them later. "What happened to you? Why did you quit? I thought you were going to stay with us and be with us on this team." This and that got in the way. Lots of things got in the way. And then when it came time later, to use an American sports analogy, when it came time later, when this season closes, there is a celebration. And they hand out little pieces of cloth with a letter, which is the letter of the school. And if you are so fortunate, you get to put it on your jacket. That's a big deal. And I remember that when the letter came, I thought I had the letter. And I will tell you that the friends who left their football gear behind, who left their pads in the gym and turned in their ticket, they were in regret. This is something that many of us know, because when the letters came out at the end of the season, it was true. And I remember one saying to me, "Oh, I should have stayed." Followed up by saying, "David, why didn't you force me to stay?" And I remember this because I thought to myself, I was now getting on 15. Why didn't I help him to stay? He was a friend, a high school friend, the kind that you have and you treasure while you have them, but they don't necessarily last long into adulthood, if you all know what I mean. It's the friends that we make often after high school that are the lasting, deep, good, solid friends. And I asked myself at that moment, why didn't I go and retrieve him? Why didn't I, beg him a little bit? Why didn't I shame him into staying? And that stayed with me. It stayed with me in a strong way. Because later in my life, I got something better than a cloth letter. I got rank on my collars, my shoulders. And I remember getting that, and I thought, I'm not going to let this mistake happen. I'm not going to let someone get away, drop their gear, and then later be in regret and say, why didn't you stop me? And I also had authority now to say, you won't drop your gear, you will carry your gear, and you are going to keep your gear going. And in the church, here comes the second difficulty. We don't have anybody that will come and tell you, I reject the idea of you turning in your gear. We don't have anybody to do that. I won't receive your gear back in the locker room and in the storage room. We don't have that possibility. It is quite possible for brothers and sisters to go right out the door and never come back. These are the difficulties that we face. And I would hope, and I would pray, and I would beg you all to make sure that when the door opens, that it opens generously. Even though it says, be separate. When you come in here, you are separate, but people still have to come in. We still have to bring them in. We have to do what is, in fact, called the Great Commission in some churches, to go and baptize all the nations in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, the triple immersion. We still live under that command. We have to open that door and go out and get them in and bring them in. And once they're here, let's be honest, and once we're here, we have to figure out a way how to stay here so that the be ye separate is actually life-giving and generous, merciful and kind. What does St. Paul tell us? Having therefore these promises, dearly beloved, let us cleanse ourselves from all filthiness of the flesh and spirit, perfecting holiness in the fear of God. Why? Because as he says, you are the temple of the Holy Spirit. You have already been made holy. You have already had the promise bestowed upon you at your baptism. The greatest moment of putting on a uniform, of course, is not in the military. It is not in a sports team. Although I have to tell you, I was very proud of some uniforms that I had, both in high school and after. I really liked those uniforms a lot, and I treasured them. And I will tell a personal confession. I still have a portion of one of them in a closet someplace. I know that that piece of gear is somewhere on a hanger, somewhere collecting dust, as a marker that I did something that was difficult. But it still pales in comparison to the greatest uniform, the greatest moment that we have all had, which is the moment we were baptized, the moment we came out of the water for the third time, and we are pronounced at that moment a new creation. When we came out of the water and were dried off, whether as a child or a teenager or an adult, and then we're clothed, set apart, be ye separate, in white garments, and then anointed, sealed with the gift of the Holy Spirit, a cross placed on our chest, a candle in our hand or in our sponsor's hand, and then like a bishop, priest, or a deacon, or a newly married couple, transported around the font 3 times with the singing, "Rejoice, O Isaiah." It doesn't, I get the goosebumps just thinking about it. I think I need to do a baptism. I'm overdue now. Or we need to have an ordination celebrated here at St. John's once again. That's the greatest day, and we have all been separated from the world in that really great and fine day. And of course, it's our prayer and our work that we will not be lost on the last day. May God save us from that and protect us.